Hello, this is Kirsten Smith, Collections Curator at the Alberni Valley Museum. Today, on Museum at Home, we're looking at Port Alberni through the eyes of a newly arrived settler in 1908. Using photographic postcards of the local area, Robert Blandy, or Bob as he signed his postcards, writes to his family living in Ontario, remarking on the points of interest in the photographs of what was then called New Alberni. The first postcard we have is dated January 18th, 1908. Bob points out the store and wharf where he works. He writes, "The big window belongs to the office where I sit to keep the books. You also see the low window of our kitchen across the road from the store." Bob worked for Arthur E. Waterhouse, who had a store and wharf as well as other businesses in town. Bob continues describing the foreground. On the right are a few piles of the old wharf, burnt down 30 years ago. He's referring to the pilings left by the Anderson Mill that operated from 1860 to 1864 and then burned down in 1879. Timbers from the Anderson Mill, seen here in a 2010 exhibit, can be found at the Alberni Valley Museum. In Bob's next postcard, dated January 20-something, 1908, we can't quite tell because part of the postmark isn't fully visible, Bob writes that the image is of historical interest as it shows the site of the wharves for this second Vancouver. He continues, "The little white hut beyond the boathouse is where the Trans-Pacific cable lands." The cable steamer Iris, shown here, laid a cable from Bamfield to Port Alberni in 1903. The Trans-Pacific cable from Fanning Island to Bamfield was completed in 1902 and was connected by land to Port Alberni, but winter storms and falling trees kept breaking the line, so it was replaced with an underwater cable. On January 29, 1908, Bob sent a postcard showing another view of his home and workplace. He writes, "This view gives a glimpse of the Beaufort Range, a high ridge on the east side of the Somast Valley, and in full view from my shack, the back of which you can see here. The little building to the left of the store is our powder magazine, 100 yards away along the shore." The next postcard we have is from May 13th, 1908. Bob writes that this is the best view yet I have seen of our future city, and he used penciled numbers to identify different places in town. One is Waterhouse Hall that was located on 2nd Avenue between Athol and Argyle. 2 is Rollins Hotel, also known as the King Edward Hotel at Argyle and 1st Avenue. 3 is the Somast Hotel, owned by Waterhouse, built onto the former Port Alberni Hotel. 4 is James Woods' house, one of Bob's former employers. 5 is George Bird's sawmill in what is now the Harbor Key area. 6 Bob calls House Alongside Fox's Garden. It would have been on 4th or 5th Avenue at Argyle. 7 is the New Alberni Public School at 3rd and Angus. And 8 is the wharf where Bob worked. In the margin of the postcard, Bob writes, "The smoke is from the fires in the right-of-way clearing. That is, the preparations for building the railway." In the June 4th, 1908 postcard, we see a photo of Bob himself in front of his home. He identifies the people. From left to right, we see Captain T.L. Fox, a horticulturalist who also worked for Waterhouse and came with Waterhouse to Port Alberni in 1896. A.E. Waterhouse, Bob's employer, Arthur Battle, a clerk in Waterhouse's store, and RFB, as Bob refers to himself. The initials stand for Robert Francis Blandy. He notes that he does not show up well, as he had his glasses on. He continues, "My cabin is the one with the open window. Battle's shack adjoins, his door is at the back. The upper cabin is the captain's." Commenting on the garden, Bob writes, "I wish you could see the coloring. The lower bushes are lilacs." We, fortunately, can see the color of the lilacs, as a descendant of Captain Fox's Persian purple lilac bush was planted at Port Alberni City Hall. On July 3rd, 1908, Bob sends a postcard that shows the 100-yard dash that was part of the Dominion Day celebrations. Today we'd call it Canada Day. Bob writes that this is the first heat of the 100 yards race at the sports. The course is across the bridge over the Catsuxis. Only 11 in the whole valley faced the starter. Yours truly was one of them. He is the third runner from the left. On the September 17th, 1908 postcard, Bob writes Show Day after the date. This refers to the annual fall fair that in 1908 was held on Thursday, September 17th. Bob continues, this picture is another view of the store and my cabin. Note the stumps and felled trees of the railway right-of-way. The big window belongs to my office. On December 22nd, 1908, Bob writes, the spot X marks where our new store fronts on the street, Somas Street. Bob would leave his job with Waterhouse and partner with Charles McNaughton to establish the store Alberni Hardware on what would become First Avenue. Though Bob and Charles sold the business after 3 years, it would remain in this location for almost a century. Bob continues pointing out further landmarks. On the left is Watson's boarding house. On the right, the hall. Waterhouse's hotel is behind the store, off the picture, lower down the slope. The view shows the tide flats, the upper harbor, the old town, a few houses of the Pechasset, and in the distance, the Beaufort Range. The view was taken from the balcony of the King Edward Hotel. And that ends our year of 1908 postcards. Except, wait, there's one more. This one is from 1910 and addressed to Bob's youngest brother, Jeff, who would have been about 11 at the time. Dear Jeff, this shows Port Alberni. By 1910, the town had changed its name from New Alberni. This shows Port Alberni in April 1910, after the big 200-acre slashing had been done. By this time next year, we hope to see many more buildings. The town lots are booming. I have marked the Alberni Hardware Company's premises. Note the railway embankment and the locomotive with train of dump cars. Bird's sawmill is at the extreme right. The slashing extends for a half-mile further north, but there are no houses on that part yet. Keep this carefully as a record. Bob. And there we have a glimpse of the settlement that would become Port Alberni, from the viewpoint of a newly arrived settler. When the city of Port Alberni was incorporated in 1912, Arthur E. Waterhouse would become the first mayor, and Bob, the first city clerk. That's all for this episode. Thanks for watching the Alberni Valley Museum's Museum at Home.